Hi, everyone. Welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. This is a special video daily editorial as we are getting an update from Graphene Manufacturing Group, also known as GMG, on our website, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GMG. I am chatting with the founder and CEO, Craig Nicol. Now, Craig, we're doing this in a video format because there are 3 different news releases that were released approximately over the last month that we all need to cover that deal with the battery division here at GMG and the move towards actually producing some battery prototypes that the company now has. So we're going to go through just a shortened slide deck here, and we're going to take these different news releases really in order, starting with the November 30th global patent application being filed. Let's talk about this global patent. First and foremost, a couple questions that came in. Really wanted to know, how long is this global patent good for? And please discuss how this patent will work for the company protecting some of your technology.
Hey, Cory, good to be back on. Always a pleasure. So the patent process that we're working through is called the PCT process, which enables us to globally, except for a few countries around the world, which are not included in the PCT process, to be able to lock this patent in a country determination. So we roughly have about 18 months, we understand, to go through and then allocate it in a country by country basis for this patent. This is still patent pending. That's important to know. So it'll go through the country determination as we pick the countries we want to put this into over the next 18 months with this PCT overarching application. So it's important to note that UQ or UniQuest is actually progressing this patent, and of course they've got they're basically experts in this. They've done it for many different types of inventions and patented ideas in biotech, nanotech, and others. So we're really working with them, and we're the obviously exclusive license holder for this globally, but for battery cathodes. But it is being managed by UniQuest and UQ with us consulting. So it's a pretty powerful way to manage this with such an amazing university who's kind of working through it. Obviously being one of the best universities in the world. So we'll pick the countries that we want to drop this into, and then it goes through a determination process, and then there's a potential for it to be patented then in those countries we pick, and then that would then last generally, I think, for about 20 years, depending on how it gets defined and agreed.
So then, Craig, does the countries that you will bring this patent to first, are those going to be maybe the near-term target for where this battery can be distributed and eventually put into market?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange law, patent law. You need to decide at a certain time which countries you're going to work on, and then you pretty much can't go back on other countries. So you pretty much got to pick the countries you want to work with, and then you go into the country process for those countries. And then as you come out of those country processes, you get patent in those countries, and then it's pretty hard to go back on other countries that you haven't picked up in the first place. So we'll be picking obviously the predominant ones that most people would pick, and then working through that in detail. And we've obviously got the budget to do that as well.
Okay. So really, this patent, it's needed.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's different. It allows you to protect the product and the process, and that's important to know. Process patents, we're not really a big believer in those. It's pretty hard to protect a process with a patent, because you'd almost have to go into another company's factory to work out if they've copied you. And that's pretty hard to do. So that's why we didn't patent our graphene process. But with the product, you can buy the product and then pull it apart and say, oh, you've copied us. So Hence, it's a lot easier to think that you can protect it with a patent. But it is interesting if you look at, say, how Elon Musk has looked at patents. He got them for his batteries on his battery pack, and then after a certain period of time, he realized that wasn't the key deliverable. That wasn't the thing that he could actually work on. It was actually the fact that his team was progressing things so fast that he thought that other people couldn't catch up. So he open sourced all his battery pack technology because he thought that was the best thing to do for the world. So I'm not saying we're going to do that for ours, but really patents are there to give you some security around what you're doing. But in the early days, but in the end, it's the team that really will deliver this. It's the patents are just something that you have to kind of give you some confidence that you're not going to get taken away and have a problem with IP. So it's important, but it's definitely not the thing that we're going to be relying on to protect our product position in the market. Our product position in the market will be delivered by a team. Big alignment with what Musk has done there, and what he believes is the best thing to keep a product competitive is just to keep pushing and making a better product every day.
Okay, let's move on to the next news release, December 9th, because that is the commissioning of the pilot plant. It announced the first batteries had been made. This is really the step that I know a lot of investors were looking for, where the pilot plant is starting to produce some of these coin cells. Let's talk about the commencement of this pilot plant testing then. Approximately, do you have a number for us at max production? How many coin cells can be produced from this facility?
Yeah, so the pilot plant is intentionally done to be very manual because we are going to be optimizing all different types of technologies. There's something over 300,000 different types of combinations that we need to work through. And if you like, it's about 1980s for lithium as where we are now. So we're bringing a completely new technology or battery technology to market. And we need to realize that we're going to continue to optimize the technology as we pump out new products. So if you like, you'll have this pilot plant will continue to test all different types of technology. We could probably at maximum do about 50 different types of coin cells a day, or 50 different types of batteries a day. But what we're doing is testing which ones work best and which ones have better energy density, which ones have better capacity. We do all sorts of cathode engineering. We do all sorts of electrolyte engineering, and we do cell engineering. So it's and we're doing all sorts of different optimizations with the cathode and on the anode, which is pretty basic. It's an aluminium foil, but you can get different aluminium foils and you can get different thicknesses. The electrolyte is pretty simple, but you can put it in different ways. You can store it in different ways. You can age it in different ways on the cathode, and then you can also do different optimizations on the separator. So if you like, this is our sandpit to make the best batteries we can. And then when we see one that we can sell and we can make, this will continue to operate. This will continue to create more batteries that are better, but at the same time, we'll spin off the product under our arrangement with Bosch. We'll say, Bosch, we need to make this battery. We'll then put the graphene plant in place, and then we'll build the production around that to sell to customers. So the pilot plant's job is to come up with the best science to put into the best product, and then the sales and marketing team, production team go away and produce that. And meanwhile, the scientists are still there every day with their engineers checking to make it even better on the next day, but then that'll be in the next product. If you like, it's like an iPhone 1. When it came out, everyone was pretty amazed, but soon enough, iPhone 3 came out and people kind of really didn't even know how to use an iPhone 1 anymore. It was so old, and they kind of looked at it in disdain. So this is this job. They've got to come out with the different versions, and there is years of opportunity to progress and make a better battery through this team and this plant. Now, obviously, we're putting our pilot plant in the same facility early next year. We've actually got a bit of a delay. We've got a couple of weeks delay on that pilot plant coming to our shores. from freight issues. So we'll have it up and running early next year, but probably a few months in, I'd suspect, and we'll start making our first pouch pack batteries. And that is obviously the biggest market there is in lithium-ion battery opportunities. We've got hundreds of companies that want to see an initial pouch pack around the world. So right now, this is just coin cells, and it's operating well, and it's commissioned, and we've been able to produce a number of batteries here and tested them, and they went well.
Okay. Yeah, the most recent news release on December 22nd actually had a picture of those coin cells that you guys are producing. We had a couple questions discussing the graphene that is being used in making these batteries. First question is, what is the current success rate for making battery grade graphene?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's good to talk through. So these batteries work with all different types of graphene and almost all of our graphene that we produce. But what we're trying to get to is an optimal battery that we want to produce for the customer. And that is a connecting of the dots. So we have a quality process to produce the graphene and check the quality of the graphene. And that's one team here, basically about a third of the company that is doing work on that. And then we have another process is making the batteries and testing them with customers. And right now we've disconnected the two, because what we're trying to do is making sure that we have the batteries that customers want. And then early next year, we'll connect these two processes up. So the graphene will be at a certain type of morphology that then will go into the batteries that then will go to customers. And that's obviously the end state. That's where you need to be. But right now, we've disconnected the two because we need to continue to optimize the battery grade graphene. And to be quite frank, that'll never stop happening. That'll continue to always be, just like the batteries will always be optimized. But at some point, and this is what we'll bring all this together and put a production plan in place and for customers to buy the batteries. But the optimization of the graphene will never continue to, will never stop. It will continue to be optimized because that's what we do. We haven't stopped since the day we actually started the company and we started making graphene. So to answer the question, the graphene that we make can make a battery, but we need to make sure that the graphene that we make in the end at production time, which is the most important time for it to work, is the graphene that is going to go into the battery that the customer will buy, and hopefully many of them at the right price. So that's the next step, which will be next year. And there are teams, and we've got roughly a third of the company working on how well the battery works and working with customer conversations. And then, we've got a third of the company working on selling our TXR products roughly. So those conversations, they get, there's an enormous amount of iteration and connected science and spotting the patterns. So you're talking about an enormous amount of control, optimization on the graphene, and then you've got an enormous number of hundreds of thousands of different battery optimizations. So to put the two together, that's what we'll do next year. And we've got very good, solid belief that that'll all come together at the right time.
Okay, I think that also starts to answer a whole other question that dealt with in the most recent news release. It mentioned that you were testing other graphene in these batteries. Does that just tie into the fact that you're trying to find what that right mixture is to make the most effective battery?
Yeah, it's the most effective battery for the right customer. That's the most important thing. It's not in any way saying we're not there yet on anything that we want it to be at this point. What we're doing is we're giving everything a run. And I could foresee, in the future, various different types of carbon and graphene mixes in going into different quality type battery outcomes. and then selling potentially at different prices. That could definitely be the case. That's one strategy. Well, it is really about what the customer wants, and we'll have for instance, the coin cell prototypes we sent out 2 capacities, and for them to test, and because they're different technology, they're different parameters inside them, and we want to understand what they want. We have a belief of what they want, but that's nothing compared to what they actually believe and what they want. So we'll identify from them what they want from our technology, because it is so different. It has the ability to do so many things that lithium-ion batteries can't. And we need to understand what's really important for them. There's 7 or 8 key features that we are remarkably different on to lithium batteries, as in outperforming. So which parameter is more important than the other? And everyone's got a different answer. Every customer is going to have a different response. So that's why we're also looking at different carbons, different graphenes as well as ours, to see what will meet that customer up front, what will meet it later, and what will meet it in the long term. They're all questions we need to get across.
Okay, so in that last news release on December 22nd, you did also mention that some of these batteries have been shipped to consumers, and you are going to engage these consumers for feedback. Any more insights in terms of how many customers you sent these to and when you will get some of that feedback starting to trickle in?
Yeah, so it's a pretty select group. We mentioned that it was 1.7 volts, so it's not a standard voltage for a 2032. It's normally 3.4 or 3 to 4 volts. So that's the first thing. So we need to have companies that can be willing to test in different voltages. Although your AAA and your AA batteries are 1.5 volts, so it's very similar to that voltage. It's not an unknown voltage, just not used for 2032s typically. So these companies are big. I can promise you, big enough to make some orders if these are what they want to see, and they want to go into production. Some of them are kind of global brand names, but we're actually seeking some very valuable feedback to be able to progress the coin cell product, and we sought out companies that we thought could do that for us in a way which we would then be able to optimize their feedback into the next stage of the product. So not enormous number, but certainly enough, we think, to be able to handle. We are still only 30 people. We can't take an enormous number of potential customers through versus on this really intense engagement phase. And there'll be more that we'll send out next year as well. That's definitely going to happen as well. So I hope I've kind of answered that enough to kind of give a bit of clarity. The pouch pack space next year will be, I think, far more diverse, because a 1.7 volt pouch pack, or if we're at 3.5 volts by then, the 3.5 volt pouch pack is usable by, I think we've got close to 300-400 companies who've asked for them globally. So I think we're going to see a lot more engagement on that, because there's so many different applications and so many different ways it can be used. So the coin cell is a bit more specific. We're building our team so we can receive the feedback. Pouch pack's going to be a lot more, and I think far more differentiated applications testing as well. But in what we aim to obviously had is to come back to the market sometime next year and say, oh, this is where we're at and this is where we want to progress to. That's clearly the next stage after this.
Okay. So yeah, that is another question that deals with, now that you have announced coin cell prototypes are in consumers' hands, what are the next steps? What drives the next steps to even get to full-scale manufacturing? That sounds like it's a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, so we get to a customer conversation that we can get clarity on, and then on price and volume and spec. then it's a case of we've already kicked off work with Bosch on their project team to define what the battery plant would look like and cost. Then we've ostensibly said we'd really like to get into a automotive production plant next year, and that's kind of the brief to Bosch. Of course, if we don't make it, that'll be because of different reasons, but that's what we're trying to get to. And then the graphene plant will need to be expanded or to be actually relocated to our new headquarters. And so that'll have to get done, and we're working on a number of different engineering partnership work there. So that's the steps to put that in place are definitely there. There's been a lot of work done to get to a place where we can try to execute that next year. We certainly got the funding, the team and the counterparties lined up. So really, it's about pulling this together next year and trying to push as fast as we can into a production, automatic production final investment decision, and then hopefully start pumping these out next year. And that's possible. There's a few things that have to go right, but if we end up in early or in 2023, probably wouldn't be a big problem, because it might just mean that it's a bigger plant that we're running and that took a longer time to build. So the potential for these coin cells is really quite extraordinary. There's almost any type of device can be used. They currently use 2032s plus others that are coming onto the scene. You've got IoT sensors that need these types of coin cells. So and we're going to be changing the way people use their batteries, because they'll be able to recharge them in less than a minute. And so the chance for them to have a very different way to look at their coin cell batteries is reasonably high. And that is something that we've got to work out how to best bring to market. And that's why we've offered this USB recharger, which basically you stick it into your computer or any type of socket and it'll recharge it in a few seconds, depending on the capacity. So there's a bunch of things we need to work through. Obviously, if we're selling to a big personal electronics company, you wouldn't have the USB recharger. But if we're going into distribution channels that are certainly very open to, we have some that are very keen to see this go into distribution channels, well, then the USB recharger would come with that. And it's a very different conversation with customers. You're saying you got something that could last just multiple times longer than the current battery. And so how does that work? Then the current, where they just use it and throw it out, and then it goes into basically a lithium battery pile that you can't recycle. So there's a range of things that need to work through. Also, lithium batteries, it's documented that about 60 kids die in Australia from swallowing them every year. And that's just Australia, with a couple of thousand go to hospital every year from swallowing them. So our battery is highly likely not to be that kind of impact. So how do we manage that as well? So how do we make sure that this is available where it's wanted for that kind of impact as well? So a bit to work through, Cory.
Yeah, fair enough, but it's very cool technology. And let's talk about a little bit of that technology, because you mentioned these initial coin cells, they're 1.7 volts. You're looking to raise this up to 3.4, 3.5 volts. How difficult is that process? What goes into increasing the voltage?
Yeah, it's a bit of electrode engineering. Pretty confident we can do it. You can obviously have just two of these coin cells together, and then that makes you 3.4 volts, and that's quite simple. But what we'll do is we'll just do that inside the coin cell, which we've done, and we feel like we can do it again, and we just got to do it the right time, and do it in a way which then we can say with surety we can do it every time. That's all we're going to do. So it's just like adding these two coin cells together, but we put them into one coin cell.
That makes sense. What about performance data? Can we talk about performance data, when we might see some updated data on either these batteries that are currently being produced or even the upgraded higher voltage batteries?
Yeah, look, I think we've made a very intentional uh, release around how we were going to update on performance data. What we're seeing is these are similar to the ones we're talking about. They're very, very fast charging, can cycle for thousands of cycles, non-flammable, basically non-toxic, fully recyclable. Basically, there's these things that pull them apart, you wash them and probably reuse them, or just get the alfoil recycled and reuse new. So what's most people are wondering about is what is the capacity of the battery, and we've actually sent multiple capacities to the customers to work out which ones they would prefer. So once we actually understand what our customers want, we'll start, and actually we have clarity that that's what they want, then we'll probably start talking about that's what we're going to produce. And so the capacity is probably the one thing that will come out sometime next year and say this is where we're at. But we believe these batteries, as they stand now, have potential for commercial production and commercial sales. And so that's why we've sent them to some pretty big companies and we've issued the release as such.
Okay, perfect. Final question then. You've alluded to the pouch pack a lot coming in 2022. When do you think that will come? What steps need to be taken before this prototype is ready to send for testing?
Yeah, so pouch packs, we're effectively making the cathode for the pouch pack already, except we then stamp it into a coin cell. So that's the difference. So the cathode space is pretty much there, although we have to do a bit more work. We have to actually make it in the right dimensions, exact dimensions for the pouch pack. And then there's a bit more doing electrolyte filling and sealing of the pouch pack. So not too much different to what we're doing now. There's generally perceived a higher performance factor that comes out of the pouch pack because there's a lot of dead weight in coin cells. There's a lot of issues that you've got to get around because of the way the cells are constructed, and you can't get around that because that's what they come in. So the pouch pack should see us as a higher performing outcome generally, and that's what we've been told by a number of big companies that are talking to us about this. So we look forward to that because it will release some of the outcome, the performance again, even higher. So I think what we need to do is, get it to a point which we're very happy with, and then having that repeatedly working and then seeing that with a potential customer. We've made a date at the end of next year. We would like to get our pouch pack ready and working and having it out for prototype testing. So we've given ourselves a bit of breathing space. Some things can be a bit more difficult with these pouch packs, and so that's probably why. But we'd obviously love to come out and smash that next year. So we'll see where we get to, and we'll be trying every effort to smash it as fast as we can. We'll have all the equipment, and we'll aim to have more scientists come onto our team so that we can really push this as fast as we can next year, and meanwhile push the coin cells hopefully into commercial production.
Okay. Craig, look, it's been fun following along with the company this year. The stock has done well. It's a little off of its highs, but it has been a very well-performing stock here, driven a lot by news coming out of a lot of different assets, the 3 different arms that this company has. What should investors be looking for next year? What are some of the key catalysts going to be?
Yeah, I think it's definitely having some partnerships. So what we're trying to work through is we need a coalition of the willing to bring this brand new technology to market. And so we're really trying to work with some very large companies who can bring this together and push this out as fast as possible at scale fast as possible. So that's what we've been working on. Obviously, we're talking to some very large companies around batteries as an opportunity to sell. and produce for. But you know, we'll be keeping ourselves pretty quiet around that space until we can be really clear what will happen. And then, you know, with the other products that we have, we'll obviously be looking to push them through to significant revenue, which you know, absolutely is a priority and has been all this year. So we'll you know, hopefully have some good news around significant revenues, and then some battery market progress, and you know, I think that would be a solid year for next year. Basically, complete consolidation on that we are a next gen battery manufacturer, and then consolidation on revenues for our energy saving products. And I think, you know, that'll make a very nice 2022.
Okay. Craig, I appreciate the update. If any of you have any follow-up questions, please email me, fleck@kereport.com. I will get Craig to address those in the new year. In full disclosure, I am a shareholder of GMG. I'm going to keep following up on the back of some more news. And Craig, so far, hey, this year, very important for the company. Next year is going to be another developmental stage here that should be quite exciting for a number of the divisions. So thank you again for the update. We all appreciate you answering and addressing these questions as you have throughout the year. So Craig, again, thank you very much for this update.
Thank you. See you next year.